Hi, my name is Kaylee Ankles and this is my audience. She never got to grow up, chase her dreams, or live the life she truly deserved. At just 6 years old, JonBenet Ramsey became the face of one of America's most heartbreaking unsolved crimes. As young adults who may become parents one day, this case should serve as an eye-opener that even the most perfect people sometimes have the darkest secrets. The evidence surrounding JonBenet Ramsey's murder strongly suggests that her parents, John and Patsy Ramsey, were involved in covering up the crime. The inconsistency in their statements, the forensics evidence indicating that this crime scene was staged, and their odd behavior following the death all raise serious doubts of their innocence. There are three main reasons I believe that the Ramseys had involvement with their daughter's murder. First, I will discuss the forensics evidence that suggests the crime scene was staged. Second, I will discuss the inconsistencies of the Ramsey family statements and the 911 call. Finally, I will talk about the Ramseys' odd behavior and public response to the aftermath of the murder. First, let's take a look at the strange and inconsistent statements given by JonBenet's parents right after her death. The Ramsey statements and 911 call were inconsistent and very odd. When Patsy Ramsey called 911, Patsy's behavior was oddly calm, speaking steadily as though she was trying to discuss a minor issue rather than a life-threatening emergency. Experts, including former FBI investigator Candace DeLong, noted this very suspicious. The ransom note found at the scene of JonBenet's murder was not normal for those left by kidnappers. It was long, containing specific phrases that sounded just like John Ramsey's vocabulary, leading me and many others to believe that it was staged. Here is the ransom note in question. 3 pages long, which again is very odd for a ransom note. The inconsistencies in the 911 call and staging the ransom note suggest that the Ramseys were trying to create a false narrative rather than reporting an actual emergency. After considering the Ramseys' initial statements, we will now consider the forensics evidence that point to their involvement. Forensics evidence suggests that the crime scene was staged. Despite claims that the intruder had broken into their house, there was no sign of forced entry. This is a key piece of evidence that whoever killed JonBenet Ramsey had access to the home, someone likely very close to her. The ransom note was found on the staircase, but the paper it was written on came from inside the Ramsey home, a notepad that belonged to Patsy Ramsey. Additionally, the note had strange phrasing that seemed to mimic John Ramsey's business vocabulary. This raised suspicion that the note was written by someone within the family or close to the family. JonBenet's autopsy revealed that she had undigested pineapple within her stomach. This contradicted the Ramseys' event timeline, as they claimed that JonBenet Ramsey was put to bed before she was served pineapple, which led investigators to speculate that she may have been awake later than the Ramseys had claimed. But why cover up something like that? Especially if you're innocent. From the lack of forced entry to the questionable origin of the ransom note, the forensics evidence gives strong reason to believe that the scene may have been staged to hide up the real truth. The Ramsey story just does not add up. One of the strongest reasons that people do not believe the Ramseys had any direct involvement to their presence of the involvement is the presence of the unidentified male DNA found in JonBenet's underwear. And testing confirmed that it did not belong to John or Patsy Ramsey. However, Burke Ramsey, JonBenet's brother, was never tested or in question for this. Ramseys nor know anyone in the household. In 2008, Boulder District Attorney Mary Lancey publicly exonerated the Ramseys, stating that the DNA likely belonged to an unknown male suspect. This suggests that the intruder may have been responsible for JonBenet Ramsey rather than just her parents. Besides the physical evidence, the behavior of the Ramseys after JonBenet Ramsey's death raises additional suspicion about their involvement. The Ramseys' behavior after the murder was not typical for grieving parents. The Ramseys hired a public relations team and attorneys immediately after the murder. Why do such a thing if you are innocent? Which, again, is not typical for grieving parents. They were also slow to cooperate with the police investigation, avoiding separate interviews and insisting on joint statements. This behavior is another reason why I highly believe that the involvement of their daughter's murder. Though the police requested it, the Ramseys were initially unwilling to take a polygraph test and only did so under the conditions that they were allowed to control the process. Polygraph results, which indicated that they were not telling the truth, were dismissed by their defense team. Odd. In the days following JonBenet Ramsey's death, the Ramseys appeared in highly publicized TV interviews that seemed overly composed. Their behavior was far more controlled than expected from parents who just lost their child in such a tragic way. In interviews conducted years after the murder, Burke Ramsey's behavior was also very odd, as if he was covering something up. He seemed detached and unemotional when discussing his sister's death, leading to many questions whether his reactions were genuine or forced. The Ramseys' behavior after JonBenet Ramsey's death, particularly their refusal to cooperate with the law enforcement, their staged TV interviews, and Burke's strange demeanor all raise red flags. These actions suggest that they may have been trying to cover up their involvement rather than cooperating with an investigation to find their daughter's murderer. In summary, the inconsistencies in the Ramsey statements, the forensics evidence pointing to a staged crime scene, and their suspicious behavior all led me to believe that JonBenet Ramsey's parents were involved in her murder. Despite having all these compelling arguments against them, John and Patsy Ramsey were never convicted of any crime involving their daughter's murder. I went over 3 main reasons why I believe the Ramseys had involvement in their daughter's murder. First, I went over the contradictions in the Ramsey statements, the unusual 911 call. Secondly, the forensics evidence, including lack of forced entry, the suspicious ransom note, and the autopsy findings. Until the truth is finally uncovered, her case remains an unsettling, unsolved mystery. And these reminding us that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones hiding in plain sight. Thank you. Here's my audience again.